Question.
Idris Shah repeats a similar type of sentence throughout his corpus, where it says something like this: more real teaching is preserved and applied in fields unrecognized by the shallow as, quote, esoteric than any outsider ever suspects.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%.
And then I watched that Thomas Cleary video on his lecture about spiritual and material slavery, and he talks about, I think it was a carpenter or something like that, and how each of their techniques and whatever passes on a little bit of wisdom that nobody would ever suspect. So this is something that I'm seeing masters or teachers talk about.
A carpenter or a comb maker?
I forget if...
I think it's a comb maker.
A comb maker.
And he's been making the combs out of bone, right, before plastics.
Uh-huh.
And they would make this because they were durable, and they've been doing it for 3 millennia, right? But now there's no one in Morocco to teach it to. And so what's going to happen to this, right? It's the same thing like we look at these sculptures in Italy, right? These magnificent marble sculptures.
Yeah.
And we go, how did they do that, right? And we have the idea of the technical thing, but nobody has any clue on how to teach it or learn it. And so those are very easy examples, but there's other things as well. All kinds of things. And so that's one of the hardest things to introduce students to. And the Buddhists aren't too helpful, but the Muslim Sufis certainly are, because it's a feature of insight and realization that you're able to see more comprehensively. Now, the way the Buddhists demonstrate it is by exemplifying it. And that is one of my seminal, one of my most important moments in my life, when I happened to see the Dalai Lama in a debate when I was, not even 20 probably, maybe something like the 20, in a debate with my hero neuroscientist, neurobiologist, etc. I mean, top level guys, Nobel Prize winning guys. And his ability to think, and to think comprehensively and flexibly, and look at things from so many different angles, he wiped the floor with them, right? It's like, it was embarrassing. And so they don't teach you how to do it, but they show you the end product, which is kind of cool too. And if you listen to Clary, I mean, listen to him on slavery. Good God, man, that guy's like, don't you agree? I mean, the guy has the depth of understanding of the dynamics of slavery, mental and physical, and the huge difference between chattel slavery and what they called domestic or civil slavery, the latter of which you could earn your way out of, you could buy your way out of, and so on and so forth. You weren't property. You were still a human being. And this abomination called chattel slavery, which is, not unique to the United States, but was here, quite a long time. Too long. But then if you don't consider what the British, have a habit of doing to the Irish every so often, and every country sooner or later has these horrible stains on their culture, right? You begin to understand that, wait a minute, there's something more deeper here. There's a deeper levels of understanding this and addressing it. It's the the starvation for meaning, and the feeling that you won't have enough, or that somehow or another, the more you get for yourself, the better you are, the more people admire you, or the more power you have, something like that. But it never works out, right? It never works out. And so the insight that goes along with wisdom is pretty powerful when you see it in action. But as far as I know, only the Sufis, and they do it by many different means. And it's to be admired, and hopefully someday somebody will come along that can do that stuff for the next level, in the days of AGI or ASI, So we'll see.
So then for this comb maker in Cleary's example,
mm-hmm.
What's the, let me get the words.
You should listen to those tapes at least twice or 3 times, frankly. They're rich. They're very rich.
I'm re-listening. What's the real teaching preserved in there that no outsider would suspect?
That meaning in work is not a matter of just how it's organized and by whom and how efficient it is and how much money is going to be made. And those latter ways of looking at human labor are very, very impoverished. And I can imagine being a comb maker and spending days like finding the right bone, right? And then sanding it down and crafting it to where the tines aren't too thick and not too fragile, and of the right depth for a particular woman's hair, right? And the art is kind of endless, right? Mm-hmm. And to have a comb like that could last for hundreds of years. And it's a beautiful comb. It's not like, we feel lucky if we get a comb with a few leather, hairs in it. Right? It's not the synthetic. You still live life surrounded by crap. And if you go to these mosques, or some of the cathedrals or some of the, in Greek Orthodox also, you see that they're rich. They're not impoverished the way we are. And what we've inherited is ugly and impoverished and sterile and not nourishing. And people at the same time are saying, well, I hate my work. Well, yeah, you hate your work. Your work is not worth anything more than a machine to do. But you could get a machine to make these combs, that's true. But that's missing the whole point. You're doing something for somebody and for the people around you. You're the comb maker. It's like the person who bakes the bread in a little town in the south of France. He's not just a baker. He's not just a businessman. He's there for people in a way that's very, very important to them and to him. And that's just so much a wiser way to live than what we've done now, which is to turn everything into, well, how much money can I make in how little of time? Which is, not... I'm not an Luddite either. I'm not against this stuff. I'm just saying that the price is astronomical. If you're going to a cubicle and you're doing something you don't believe in, and you're squandering the years in which in youth, when your brain could absorb much, much more than it can later, your peak learning years, your peak years for like cultivation. Alexander the Great was like 30 when he died, right? When you read about some of these people, it's crazy. But we're not surprised because we know from great geniuses that most of their great work is done by the time they're 30 or 40 or something like that. I'm not trying to discourage people, but the thing is, we're wasting our lives. And so we're going back to the Hadrat Ali. When you go to bed at night, think of death. And when you wake up in the morning, think of life, the life you have left before death. And so they aren't empty, they're not just trying to get your attention for no reason. These are things worth contemplating. And when you contemplate them, you then become richer as a person. It's hard to put in words, and it's very hard these days when we're in a real cultural backwater, especially compared to the rest of the world. I mean, I'm just starting to learn about, like the history of the Turks and the history of the that whole region, the Levant, up in there, and the Georgia and the East. We call it Eastern Europe now. Well, the Holy Roman Empire and what was up against that, and the Persians and all that stuff. And my ignorance is abysmal, right? And then you realize that, wait a minute, we're completely children on this planet, Americans. We're like 12, 13-year-olds. We like to blow stuff up. We're like the Beavis and Butthead of the planet. But it's okay. Because it's 14-year-old, they come up with stuff. We need all of it. And we need to appreciate it more. We need to understand it more. And we need to be more grateful for what we have because we have so much. And there's so much to be done with it. Alongside it, right? Alongside the way, not to master the way. If someone thinks they're going to master this universe, they should think again. They really should. Okay, any other before we stop?
Yeah, I have one more smaller but more esoteric one.
Okay.
I'm curious about if you could say a little more on Don Juan and Carlos Castañeda, the Toltec tradition. What are allies?
Oh, allies. Allies are expedient techniques. Allies have the equivalents of allies would be angels and demons and jinns and bodhisattvas, lower level bodhisattvas, or spirits or sprites, or angelic or non-angelic beings. But they all come to teach in one formulation. They help you teach, they help you learn. They're your allies. And it could be, you could make anything your ally, like the ice cream truck. Ding, 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 ding. Every day that was my ally. It felt like my ally, right? So it doesn't have to be anything wild, but Carlos was writing a book, right? And plus he was tended towards histrionic to begin with, right? Exaggerating everything. He loved that stuff, and he was a little bit credulous too. And so allies became beautiful women, didn't they? Or ugly women, or fat women that were going to devour him and do all kinds of stuff to him if he didn't watch out. Don Juan had a lovely, lovely Mexican sense of humor, basically. And so they were playing with that guy from dawn until dusk. That was kind of their way of, he was a tough one. At any rate, so yeah, he'd tell him all kinds of stuff. And then why not? I mean, the trees are our allies. The tree is certainly the ally of the bird that's hiding from the hawk, or the squirrel that doesn't want to be on the ground when the bobcat comes. So the tree's an ally.
But
right?
why were his allies Don Juan described allies as dangerous?
Well, they could be like gorda. Yeah, when they were dangerous ones were all women his age. You notice? Well, women his age can be dangerous, right?
Okay, what about the allies that are shadow figures or silhouettes, or these like the thing that came out of the mirror or whatever it was when they're in the river?
I don't know, but I ran into that again. I was studying a book of the other thing. I mean, this is something I would never let myself study because I'm a serious man. I would never let myself study magic, right? But then some books started to pile up, and then by reputable people. And so I started to study magic because its connection to ancient mysticism is pronounced, right? And I realized that the Catholic Church made damn sure that I didn't come close to any of that stuff forever, right? Mm-hmm. They scare the hell out of you, and that's probably not wrong. But I needed to understand the psychological mechanisms and how does it work, and how do these things take effect or not take effect, and who's susceptible and who's not. And I ran into another description of something similar to that, but it was a completely different part of the world. I think it was North India, or maybe even China. So I don't know. I don't know yet, but I think there may be something there. There's all kinds of things that we have no clue about. Like the Egyptian influence on what we call Greek mathematics. I mean, we can find out, but they don't want us to. But that's been my experience. I mean, when you realize that these Greek philosophers, these Greek mystics, Pythagoras, of the highest order, they all went to Greece. They also went to India, and India came to them, and China, and and so we have a really beautiful situation, a tapestry of cultures, and the commonalities are really worth at some. And you're an old man, you got some. You're interested in those things. At some point, they're worth looking into, I think. Just for a comprehensive understanding of where have we been, what have we been doing, and how much of this is new. And the reality is almost none of it's new. And the truth is certainly not new.
No.
All right?
Good.
Okay. See you later, senor.
Oh, can I ask you one logistic?